Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, which are just conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch is Rixa Evershed. Hi, Rixa.
Hi, Deb. It's nice to see you.
It's great to see you. So Rixa has had many years, not quite as many as not quite as old as I am, but a lot of years in early childhood. She's been a family child care provider. She went, and then from there she moved to center-based care, and now she's the director of the Charles Wright Academy in Washington state, the
Yeah.
state of Washington. So, it's so nice to have you. And her topic today, which is, of course, near and dear to my heart, is the child's right to play.
Yeah. There's so many ways we can dive into this. All of us talk about it all the time about this fundamental right to be able to play and to um, be in their spaces and learn the way they want to. But I kind of wanted to come at it today, Deb, if you wouldn't mind, through the lens of documentation and thinking about how do we know
Mhm.
what to do in classrooms? How do we facilitate? How do we learn who the children are so that we can make sure that their play experiences are rich and dynamic? That's
And I
really
love that documentation piece, because I mean that's making learning visible, right? That's
right.
the
Mhm.
whole enchilada of how we convince parents and supervisors and principals and superintendents of what's actually happening, not what kids are memorizing. So
Right.
yeah, so let's go. Talk to me about that.
Talk to you about that. So, I am, as you said, the beginning school director for Charles Wright Academy, and we have a mission to provide active, joyful learning for the children that come here. And so, when we think about that, we've spent a lot of time just really thinking about like, what does that look like? How does that translate? And kind of the things we hold at the core of that um, are we creating spaces where every child feels like they have belonging, that they are seen, that they are considered human, who come to us with knowledge already in place, things to share and teach us, uh, the a worldview. They have a worldview already, and so
They
how do
do.
we understand that? And so, we're in our fourth year at its current iteration, and we have about 79 children that attend here, and we spend about 9 hours a week in the forest. So 3 days a week, we're out there for 2 to 3 hours. Then we call it an atelier, and it is Reggio inspired, but it's very much a STEAM room. So it's science and technology and engineering and art and math and all of those things that children want to dive into and explore. But we wanted to make sure that we had a framework, but we didn't have a structure, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And so we wanted to come at it from the perspective of um, we trust children to be able to drive their own learning.
Mhm.
We trust that they will learn the things they need to know to move to the next level.
When they're
Uh,
ready. Yeah.
yeah.
Not when you're ready.
We have all of the open-ended materials, right? And so there's very few things. Usually they're brought in by children who want to share them with their peers and things like that, that are kind of self-prescribed on how they're used, right? So like a truck or Hot Wheels cars, although we do have Hot Wheels cars in every classroom. I've discovered that they're an open-ended material, just just so you know, they
Yeah.
really are. Um, but so that's kind of been the premise of everything that we've wanted to do, is that we want to uh, come at it from a space of co-learning ourselves. Uh, we're the facilitators versus teachers.
Mm.
So we have information to provide to the class, in the same way that children have information to provide to the class. And it's very much a reciprocal give and take, with very little teacher directed anything. And
Thank you.
so, yeah. And so, if children leave our program with a sense of responsibility for caring for other people,
Mhm.
for caring for the world around them, for caring for their communities, and all of the pieces that go with that, then I feel like I've done my job. And to bring it back to play, I feel, and research shows, that play is the best way for children to learn that. And so we really talk a lot about a child's right to play, right?
That protecting childhood piece is I think the piece that we have totally forgot
Yeah,
because we want to rush them in their development, which doesn't work. I mean, you're just going to make them feel like they're failures all the time if you rush it when their little
right.
bodies and brains are not quite ready. And so I do think that protecting childhood and the child's right has to be at the forefront of everything that we do or say, and how we preface the work that is needed with families and communities and um, administrators who feel pressure to get them ready sooner, right? So it's a task that's manageable but challenging, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. We
how
went
are you
to,
using documentation to help you with that?
so one of the things that we have in documentation, there's this idea out there that because Reggio does such a beautiful job of documentation, that everybody should be doing documentation, and that documentation is just writing down what you see, maybe attaching a picture to it. I think that we need to be very careful around documentation, that we don't just do what I just described, right? We don't just, oh, I wrote down their experience, I put a picture on it, I put it up on the wall, that's documentation. Because in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion alone, but the more I work in the space of documentation and uh capturing authentic learning, the more
Yeah.
I realize that it is very much a research project that
Mm-hmm.
we are constantly working on year round, every day, and it's truly how we see the children, and we are able to see where they are developmentally and all the pieces that kind of fall under that category of us as teachers, right? So being able to capture any kind of developmental delays and things like that, and then capture their interest and their wonders and their curiosity and their capability, and then being
Mm-hmm.
able to translate that for families,
Yeah.
when we have those conversations with them during conference time or at pickup and drop off, or whenever we are able to touch base. And so the the last 3 years we started with folks just kind of capturing, the basics of, like, this is what we see. They added the picture to it. And then
Mm-hmm.
what was really interesting is one of our new teachers, he's been with us now for 3 years, but his first year he read From Teaching to Thinking by Ann Pello and Margie Carter. And So he read it, and at the end of the year, he came in and he said to me, he said, I was really thinking that was kind of aspirational. I didn't actually think that those things happened, or that they would take years of practice on my part for it to happen. And he said, throughout the year, I just really practice kind of what they talk about in there about sitting and listening and um, answering questions, but also like getting kids to answer questions themselves. And so he came in at the end of the year. He had done his first, I'll call it a project, but they had planted some garden tubs, and he had facilitated the whole thing and kind of, how are we going to do this? And he said that by the end of the year, he was completely blown away by the level of sophistication of the questions that children were asking
Mhm.
and the things that they were noticing and the ideas they had about ways to do things that he was like, I never would have thought of that. And but it works. And so I think the piece that I find kind of at the heart of why we struggle so much to promote play is that you have to trust children to drive their own learning.
Yeah,
And that means as an adult, we have to sit down and be quiet. So
not the teacher,
you're
right?
correct.
And it's really interesting. One of the Porch Play Chats that's in the coming up is uh, I want to be the teacher, and
Mhm.
how that's not what we do, right? And we do that, right? Because we want people to give us, see us as professionals and see us as having a purpose, and that we want them to respect us as individuals instead of as babysitters or
Mhm.
the people who care for children, right? And so I think that I just want to be a teacher um, really is a starting point for us in sort
Mhm.
of teasing out why you're not the teacher
Right. Right.
and why you should be following children instead of expecting them to follow you. So it's that I think that's the I think that's the tension that people in early childhood feel, because they feel like they're just perceived as people
Oh
who are
yeah.
just there watching
Right.
children instead of fostering development, right? So
Right.
and I
It's
think
that
that's yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna
That's
say it's that facilitation piece. This might sound a little controversial, I'm not sure, but I feel like when you're in a group of children and adults, that everybody has information to share. And I think there's this tension point also around teacher driven versus child led versus um
playing with a purpose.
right, all of these things. And I noticed when I was still in the classroom, and then again in 2020 when I did the outdoor program that you and I've chatted about before, um, was that it's very much kind of a constant serve and return.
Yes.
And so if I come in and I saw something really cool on my drive in the morning, like offering that to the children as something like, hey, I saw this really cool thing on my way to work today. What have you guys ever seen that? And having a conversation and then following that where it goes.
Mhm.
And I there's a tension point there because I have encountered folks who are very much about like the teacher shouldn't bring anything to to a child-led classroom.
Oh,
And I feel like that's kind of like way too far this way.
yeah, you're on the other end of the spectrum
Yeah,
because you
and
miss opportunities over here, right?
yeah. if a child's going to come up and ask me, have you ever been to, I don't know, we just came off a winter break, so a bunch of our families went to Hawaii. And they're like, have you ever been to Hawaii? And I'm like, yeah, I've been to Hawaii. And what did you do in Hawaii? And like these conversations, and finding out, like, you see things through new eyes when you ask children to share their perspective on something, right? And so when they share with me what they thought was important about Hawaii, I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that, One of them was like, did you know that pineapple has all these shapes on it? And if I stopped to look at it, yeah, I would have figured that out. But that was like something really important that he had been waiting to share. And he was like, because he was right at eye level with
Mm-hmm.
the fruit on the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I'm looking down at it from the top and he's looking right at
Right
it.
at it.
And so, it just, that openness that is required from us as educators to a variety of information, right, wrong, indifferent. Like kids sometimes come in and they're like totally, like, completely off on some separate tangent. Um, but how is it my responsibility to bring that tangent back in?
Right.
Should I do that, or should I maybe ask clarifying questions, right?
Mm.
And so I think about, from a documentation standpoint, is like, I had a teacher, she actually lives in Hawaii now, who did documentation in such a powerful way. She would write what she saw, and then she would write her wonders underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you would read the documentation, you could see the engagement of her mind in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, that would help her guide materials to put out in the classroom, or um books to bring in, or conversations to have, or maybe noticing that, hey, this child is really interested in this and I know this child is really good at that. And so,
Well, but I also think what you just said is when the teacher said, I wonder, then the parents might look at that documentation and go, oh, I would never have even thought to think about. I thought they were just playing, right?
the just playing
The
the
just playing.
Mhm.
I would never have thought to think that, wow, he's just or she's just showing me an interest
Right.
that I need to not talk about necessarily, but maybe
Right.
provide experiences. Like if we went to the museum and they were really interested in something, that I could build on that interest without saying, now I'm going to teach you about that, right? That the experiences bubble
Right.
up, just like she did with bringing in materials or asking clarifying questions. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
If parents said, I wonder why my toddler is dumping and filling everything, we could talk to them about the play schema that they're working on.
I don't know how I knew that you were going to ask that question.
Yeah,
Like, she's going
what?
to say about dumping.
They're dumping. And I'm like, okay, well, this is why they're
Yeah.
doing it. It's driven from within. You can't control it. You
No.
can, you can provide opportunities to, sort of replace what they're currently doing with another opportunity that won't drive you as crazy, but it's internally driven. And so if parents would feel comfortable wondering
Right.
and coming to individuals who understood why that child was doing that, or we provided information on, did you ever wonder why why
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
toddler is doing this, or your infant is doing this, or your preschooler is doing this? I think they would appreciate the value of that experience that their child was having, and
Absolutely.
the value that you were able to help them understand that development.
It's so interesting to me too, because there is so much pressure on families, on parents to do parenting perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody whose kids are grown and flown, I know that that's not even aspirational. That's impossible, right?
It's impossible. Yes.
It is impossible. And so I think so much of the educational work we do around making learning visible and those conversations with families is about acknowledging that there's some pressure there. You want to make the right choices, right? And helping to walk families through that. And I think documentation around play is such a powerful way to do that, because if you have, we keep learning portfolios. I think a lot of programs do that. But if you look through the portfolio, you have tangible evidence from the beginning of the year to the end of the year of the child's progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their
Yeah.
learning.
Mm-hmm.
And to be a translator of what they're seeing, um, through the documentation that's inside those portfolios, you're able to maybe provide context would be a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Context for the play experience that
Mm-hmm.
children are engaged in. Um, because I've noticed that I can have a conversation with families about unit blocks or magnetiles or um really any of the building materials that are, specific measurements, and have share with them like the research around math competence throughout their learning journey, right? If kids play with blocks certain percentage of the time from birth to age 5, they're going to do better at trigonometry and calculus and those things, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's not tangible, right? To them,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you can document that the conversation a child is having about, we need a square here and the long triangle there and the short triangle there, and hey, teacher, this is a pyramid shape. Um, it's
Mm-hmm.
much more tangible to families. And you can say, this was completely self-driven. Here's the pictures of the entire process for families of like they were reading a book, there was this building in it, really captured their imagination. I asked them if they thought they could build it. They spent some time kind of planning this out. I'm actually describing something I saw in the classroom just the other day.
Mm-hmm.
They had, you know, anybody who has magnetiles in a classroom, and we have about 400 in every classroom because you need that many to
Mm-hmm.
build big. And so they were trying to recreate this thing this child had seen on the way to school. And so he was trying to describe it, and two or three others were, playing the critical friends of asking questions and querying the description and putting things together like, is this right? This was a group of, there was one 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and two 5-year-olds in this group.
Wow. I love the mixed age too.
Oh, I do too. And
Uh,
so the 3-year-old was just kind of throwing things together, and the other ones were like, no, not like that, do it like this. And he
mhm.
was just going along for the ride. He was very equanimous about the whole thing, which doesn't always happen either. But it in this particular, the chemistry between this particular group of children is really fascinating, because there's definitely a give and take between them. There isn't one child that's emerged as the consistent leader. They kind of share that role amongst the older ones, but occasionally Noah will start something and they'll follow his idea. He's the 3-year-old. And so it's an interesting dynamic that you see occasionally. You see these kind of groups come together where everybody just knows, kind of, they feel very comfortable in their own ability to contribute, so they don't feel like they have to like push their ideas or be in charge or any of the things. And
Mhm.
So watching them kind of go through this, it was this fascinating like magnetile structure, and it had a oddly shaped roof that they had managed to figure out how to do by using a certain shape of triangle here and the other triangle there. And they had to redo it several times to get the exact right angle of it. And the conversation, like there was this whole like play imaginary conversation going on about what the building was going to be used for, and where the doors were going to be and who was going to be there, and it was just so rich, Deb. It was just I was watching just fascinated about the way it evolved so authentically and with care for each other. There was a lot of
Mhm.
care being shown each of the members of this group, and other kiddos would come in and kind of pop back out again, but the core four kind of stayed there the whole time. And I went in, that was on, what day was that? I think that was Monday. We had a really bad windstorm here on Monday, so everybody was kind of inside. And then on Tuesday, I went in and they were doing the same thing, only this time it was with the unit blocks and the train tracks.
Mhm.
And they were literally taking up about a third of the classroom with this town. I'm calling it a town. I don't think that's what they thought it was, but I was calling it a town. Um, and again, with this really just rich give and take, and there was, in this case, there were some additional kind of protagonists in there. Some of the girls had come in, so the group of four were all boys, but some of the girls had come in and they were offering their expertise on a couple of things. And again, the give and take was just, there was so much trust between these kids, and to watch them, no teacher was needed in that moment, but at one
Right.
point they came and got me because they wanted to show me.
Mhm.
um and I was delighted, of course. I was like, of course, yes, I'll come. I will come see.
Coming right now.
Yeah. And so, but the teacher was off to the side furiously scribbling everything that they were saying,
Mhm.
just trying to get it all down. I was taking pictures. It was very much a team effort to get this piece documented. And but I think about like in structured programs or programs that have a theme for the week, or a focus on, today we're going to learn about triangles or whatever. I think about all of the social emotional pieces that were missed there, all of the collaboration and being in community pieces, the idea of having your idea for something be trusted by your peers. um that is those things are like really foundational to a child being able to, when they get older, trust themselves as learners.
Well, and I think the other thing that they're demonstrating is that when offered the opportunity to lead their own play, the richness and the attention and the problem solving and the critical thinking and the resilience and the it's okay that fell apart, let's try this now, that all of that are building a strong, capable, competent individual
Mm-hmm.
who will not be discouraged if it doesn't work the first time. So
Right.
because they've been persistent,
Yeah.
and that you don't children have to have the time to
Mm-hmm.
do that. And when we say every 15 minutes you're going to rotate, or
Right.
you have 30 minutes to play, that's not enough time to have that kind of community interaction, team building, confidence building, resilience building. All
Right.
of that is just that is such a rich opportunity that parents may not ever see when their child is home playing just with their sibling, or
Right.
They don't have time because they're too busy going to ballet or baseball practice. So
Right.
yeah,
Or they may not even know what it is that they're seeing.
yeah.
They notice that there's this really elaborate setup all over the basement floor, right?
Mhm.
And they think it's cool, but they don't understand the additional pieces that go with it because it's not their area of expertise, right?
That's right. It's not. And that's why making that learning visible and how and just saying you will never believe the beautiful thing I saw today, right? And in talking to parents, because they do they want to see pictures of their children? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Do they want to know what their child did?
Right.
And it with them, I had a parent come in when I was the director, and they said, so I just left the 4-year-old room. I said, oh yeah, I was in there like 10 minutes ago. What did you see? She said, they're playing. And I said, yeah.
They
And
sure are.
what did you see in there? And she said, well, I mean, I didn't know that he would play with other girls. And I said, so what did you see in there? And I kept saying, so what did you see? Well, they were really working in the dramatic play area, and they were cooking, and he was one of the cooks, and they had helpers, and they were determining what the menu was going to be. And I said, yeah. So what do you think they were learning? And she said, well, obviously they were playing. Yes. And what are they learning? It took me 20 minutes to get her to see everything that was happening in there.
She was
Develop.
probably like, why do you keep asking me this question? I don't
You see, what do you think is happening?
know.
Then she said, oh, and I said, that's how they learn.
Hmm.
That's they're building the foundations for everything in the
Yeah.
future. And if they
Yeah.
can't do that, then what's going to happen in preschool or kindergarten is that the teacher's going to say they're really not ready, right? Because they don't trust each other or can't work with each other.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, please, come on, let's talk about what it is they're doing. Rixa, this
We,
has been incredible. Couple of thoughts, and then I'm going to bring Dawn in and let you meet Dawn. Dawn's in
okay.
Colorado. She's in Aspen.
Oh, fun. We were just there in October. I think my final thought would just be, and as usual, this went by way too fast,
I know
but
it always does.
is that trusting children to learn through play
Uh-huh.
is both incredibly hard to do
Mhm.
because we are not taught that they can teach themselves or they can learn
Right.
on their own, and probably one of the single most important gifts that we give to children.
It is because that's everything happens when they play. It's integrated, it's child initiated, it's what they're ready for wherever they are.
It's
And
whole
it's not,
body,
it's yes. And
it's
they and
sensory driven.
we don't have to worry about it because that what they show us in their play is where they are.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and that's a gift for us. We don't have to test them. We just observe them.
Yeah. And go, whoa, whoa,
Whoa,
did you see that connection they made? Like, whoa.
do that. I remember saying many times to children, did you know you couldn't do that last week?
Yeah.
You are really learning.
Yeah.
And they would go, shoulders back,
Oh, yes, indeed,
you
I
know,
am. I am a learner.
I am a learner. And you saw and you recognize. And so anyway, I think that is, sometimes in college classrooms with students who are doing a very long-term project, right? Because that's what we do, long-term projects.
Right.
Um, and they're just like, I I I don't know, I don't know how to do that. And I'll say, well, where do you think you should start? So then we do that whole process. And at the end, they'll look at me and they'll go, I can't believe I did that. And I said, I wish you would trust yourself as much as I trust you
Yeah.
because you are capable and confident. And
Yeah.
and that is such an aha moment for them that they're like, we did do it. It's like
Indeed.
it was
Indeed.
it was scary, but we did it. And so because we never done that before, or I
Right.
didn't know how to do that, or whatever it was. So, it's those kinds of experiences with students in a college classroom that then help them begin to see the competence that they have that they
Indeed.
didn't know they had.
One of my favorite moments, because I'm not in the classroom anymore, but one of my favorite moments is always when a teacher comes running into my office and is like, did you know? Or you should have seen this. You would have loved this. And
Mm,
just those moments when everything comes together in their learning
mm,
about a child, or they've had this idea about how they want to do something and it works for the first time,
mhm.
and they're like, all of that reflection actually paid off, and researching is hard work, Deb. It's
It
hard work.
is. It's hard work.
Yeah.
But I think the word that you've used several times in this Porch Play Chat is joy. The
Mm,
joy of the
to be
teacher,
joyful. Mm-hmm.
the joy of the children,
Mm-hmm.
and how that reciprocal joy just strengthens those relationships
Yeah.
and makes children want to try new things when
Yeah.
they're ready, not when we say they should be. Oh, we've got to do this again. All right, stay right there while I close this out because I want to introduce you to Don. So to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. Up in that top right-hand corner, you can link to Spotify, which is where all the Porch Play Chats are being uploaded. And there's almost 300 of them. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel where you have access to all 300 of them. You can follow us on, I think it's Instagram. You can friend us on Facebook. And magically on Facebook and YouTube, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. So have a wonderful time and don't forget, just keep on playing.
Indeed.